Hello, I'm Ryan from Buster Beagle 3D. I recently acquired the XTOOL D1 laser engraver, which has to be used with a particular piece of software that there's not a lot of information about, so I thought I would kind of go over at least what I see about that software, and hopefully this might help someone else out who's picking up this machine and has any questions about actually how to use the software. So first thing you do is open it. The next thing we want to do is come over here to where the connection is, and there is a video that kind of goes over the connection and how to do that. I currently have this connected through a USB port, so you can see that I have my Laserbox in COM3 right now, and I'll connect to it. One thing I wanted to say about this was if you hook this device up through Wi-Fi, then you're able to actually do all of this stuff wirelessly after the first time. But this machine that I'm working on currently is, while it's on the network, it's not connected to Wi-Fi. So even when I hooked it up for the first time on Wi-Fi and could read it here, it doesn't show up the next time because this machine is not on Wi-Fi. If I open up my laptop and try to connect to the machine, I'll see the network here and I'll see the device. But on this particular machine, which is hooked up through a direct connection to my router, it's not connected to the Wi-Fi, so it doesn't show up. Just something to kind of look out for. Another thing is if you're working, you close down Laserbox, and then you reopen it, and then you click on this port. If it doesn't show up or if it doesn't connect, you might need to hit that reset button on the control board on the laser itself, and then it should allow you to connect after you do that. Okay, so if you come over here to menu, kind of the most important things in here is import and export. Import obviously is how you open up the files, and export is how you save the file once you are done with whatever it is that you're doing in here. And it'll save a LQX file, and that's the type of project file that can be read by Laserbox Basic. So first thing I'm going to import is a little picture of Buster, which is where I get my name. So this is importing what is called a raster image. You'll hear a lot of people talk about that. And a raster image is really just like a photograph. You'll hear raster and vector. Vector is where you have lines that can be cut out, and raster is more of an image. So you'll notice here the only option that I have available to me is engrave, because there's nothing to cut out currently with this particular design. It's just a raster image, not a vector image, which will allow you to cut. So first thing I'm going to do is pick my material. They have a bunch of options here that are presets for different power and speed settings. You can always change these to anything that you want, but these are kind of the ones that they have set up. Basswood is kind of like a mix between balsa and plywood. Corrugated fiber board is cardboard. Leather, stainless steel, coated metal. So you can pick whichever one you want. You'll notice I accidentally just clicked off of it and then it all went away. You have to click on the image that you're adjusting to have any of these settings pop up. So you can come over here when it's selected. You can pick any of these squares and you can resize your image. Or you can come over here to the size and you can enter in a numerical value for the size. Now these sizes are in millimeters, so if I wanted this to be 4 inches, I do 101.6. So now this image is 4 inches, so it'll engrave a 4-inch size. You can also click on this top circle, and this will allow you to rotate the image if you wanted to. Again, you can come over here into the numerical value and you can rotate the images that way. While it's being moved, you can either select it and drag it around your work area, or you can use the arrow keys for kind of a micro adjustment on your keyboard. So I'm moving those around by pressing the arrow keys. You can flip your image so you can mirror it. If you were trying to do something, engrave it on a piece of glass, but you wanted the end result to look, you know, this way, you could do that. You can also mirror it up and down. So down here it'll say in engrave mode, it'll say bidirectional and unidirectional. So bidirectional means that when it's burning the laser goes from one end, keeps burning, stops, and then burns in the other direction back to the start. So if you wanted to only ever burn in one direction, you can pick unidirectional. I'm not really sure why you would ever want to do that, but there's the option. And then down here we have the dither mode. So what gray is, from what I can understand, is gray is like pass through in some other programs. So if I was the laser and I was engraving across this image, what gray will do is the laser will kind of change its power to try to hit the particular shading value. So, you know, when the laser starts on one end, it might be at 50%, and then when it gets down to this white area, it goes down to 1%, and then it comes to here, it's at 25%, you know, and it just makes those adjustments the whole way as it goes along the image. And it just tries to do its best job to replicate this using that method. But then down here we also have these other dither modes, and unfortunately none of these show up in your viewport as to what they're actually doing. If you go to the D1 Tool Facebook group, there are a couple people there that have kind of talked about the different dither groups that are there. There's in particular there's a user named James Pelt who's done an image where he shows the same image but using the different dither methods. I don't want to post his picture here because I haven't asked him, but if you go to the group and kind of look around for that kind of stuff, you can see what the different dither methods do. So lines per centimeter is just obviously how many lines that the laser will cut in that centimeter. 100 lines per centimeter is pretty standard. I think that's kind of the normal. You can go up or down based on what you're doing, but you probably don't want to mess with that too much. The sharpness value, to be honest, I'm not really sure what the sharpness value does. It might just make the values between like black and white very sharp and drop off, so you don't have as much of a gradient between the two of those. But please do leave a comment in the comment section if you know exactly what that does. It's a little confusing to me. And then last would be the grayscale. So this is just telling you kind of the values to cull out. So you know, as you move this, you can see that it's taking out certain areas when you drag that back and forth. So if you want to do any kind of adjustments to your image, you can do that there. So again, this is only going to allow you to engrave. Now let's say you wanted to engrave this, but then you also wanted to cut this out. You can come over here to this insert, and then in the insert you'll see you have a bunch of different options for things that you can draw on this in this area. So I could grab a rectangle and I could drag it around this object, and so right now you'll see that I have engrave and cut. So this line can either be engraved or this line can be used to cut. So again, when it's engraved it's orange, and then when I come over to cut it's purple. And again, I have the same options that I had when it was engraved. I can say I want to cut basswood. It's changing the power settings based on that. I can change the size, the rotation, you know, flipping it around. But this actually brings up one of the first kind of issues I have with this software, is there's no way to figure out your layers. So once I click off of this, it's really hard to select my image again because it's wanting to select this outline no matter where I click on it. So I'm not really sure what the best thing for that is, but it would be nice if there were any type of layers in here, but there are not. So I would have to kind of move this over, move this somewhere else, and then kind of move it back. Also up here is this hand grip. If you select that, you can kind of pan around in the area. You can also zoom in and out by scrolling your middle mouse button, or you can come over here and either zoom in or zoom out. There's also hotkeys for this, for zooming in and out, or you can just go to actual size and it'll show you your entire canvas. So again, I only have, right now I have the outline selected and it'll move it. Now if I wanted to select both, I just deselect both and I can click and drag over a selection, and then I can now move both at the same time. Okay. Also with any of these inserts that you put in here, I can create a square, and then if I wanted to fill that square, I can even change that to engrave. So now it will cut this out, but it'll also engrave this entire area in here. And then when you go back to the engrave tab, you can change your settings for power and speed, which will change how dark it is. And then I can go back to the cut, turn on that fill again, and that's how you kind of like make specific shapes. Alright, so now I wanted to show you another thing. So I'm going to import another image. So this is just an image that I'm using to cut out my logo on a piece of wood. But right now this is a PNG file. Now the PNG file has no settings for cutting around the object. So it's only set to engrave. But up here they have this little outline box. So if I click on my object and then I click outline, what it'll do is it'll make an outline of the object that I had selected. This really works mainly with black and white images, and then I can come over here, change that to cut, and I can move it onto my object. Again, if you're having issues, you can use you can use the arrow keys to move this up and down. It does a fairly good job of snapping these things, but that's just a way to create a cut outline around a solid black image. Now, if I imported another thing, so this is another alpha that I have, and if I wanted to do the same thing that I just did with the last one, I'm going to hit outline, and you'll notice it doesn't do a good job if it's not one solid object. When it has some of these other sections, it really has a hard time figuring that out, which is not great. So I'm going to delete that. So if you have a image like this and you want to cut around it, in some other programs you can have it outline it, but this one won't do it. So you can either draw paths around this, or in any type of vector program, and get all of the lines that you need out of it, or a little trick that I like to use is there's a website, and the website is called Online SVG Image Converter, and I'll put a link in the description to this. And what you can do here is you can choose your file, and then I'm going to select that same layer. And what this will do is this will take a black and white image, and I'm going to hit start conversion, and it'll convert that image into an SVG file, which is a vector graphic that you can use to cut. And you can see it already downloaded it for me. Alright, so I'm going to come back. I'm going to import that SVG that I just created. It's going to say that it exceeds the canvas size. I don't know why it changes the scale of it. I'm just going to hit yes. Another thing that you'll notice once it came in, I now have a nice vector graphic. It's large, so I can scale it. Now, if I scale it, you'll notice that I can scale and I can squash it, and that's because this little lock button is not pressed. So you can see how it's unlocked over here. And so that just means that the scale is not uniform. So I'm going to Control Z to undo that. I'm going to select it, select that little box or the lock, and now I can scale it. So now, because this is a vector graphic, I can cut it, and then I can also fill it if I want to. So that's kind of a kind of trick to grab any type of black and white image, like some sort of masked image, and create a SVG out of it. Okay, so I just brought my little buster back here. I'm going to go back to Basswood. So now let's say you've done all the work in here. You've got the image that you want to work with. So now what do? So now you come over here to this start, or press F6, and what that will do is that will open up this other little window, and this is where you now have control over your laser to do different things. This little blue dot in here is showing the area that the laser will start. So wherever you position the laser on the machine, this is where it thinks it's starting on the image. So if you want to start in the top left corner, you can have that little blue dot right here. If you want to start in the center, then you move the blue dot to the center, and so now wherever that laser is in the machine, it will think that this is the center point of where you want that image. So you can home your machine here, which will move it into the back left corner. You can also move your laser using these arrow keys. This is the speed that you are manually moving your laser at. This has nothing to do with the speed of the settings that you had here. And then obviously here's the distance, so this is how far that thing moves. If you're using your rotary tool, that's where you kind of set up the cylindrical working, which will kind of engage that cylindrical tool. If you hit framing, you'll see the laser move on the machine, and where that laser pointer is, it'll kind of show the extent of where it's going to do the burn. You'll notice that laser pointer is not right under where the laser is, it's offset, but when it goes to actually do the burn, it will move to the point of where your laser pointer is. And then you would just click start, and then it would, if you're connected like I am through the wire, it'll just immediately start working. If you are connected through Wi-Fi and you click start, it'll offload this entire file to your machine, and then you have to press the start button on the machine itself to initiate the job. Alright, so I just hit cancel because I didn't want to do that just yet. Let's say I have made something, and let's see, I put a heart on something. Alright, let's just say that this is the project that I wanted to do. Now I want to save this so that I can open it up at any time. So you just come over here to menu, you click export. Down here you'll see it says save as type. and it's written in Chinese, which I cannot read. But I'm going to type in Buster. And when you save this, this will save it as it'll save it as a .lqx file. And that's all that you have to use for that. And so if I were to close this down, reopen Laserbox, and I wanted to open that, I just go to Menu, Import, and I can open up that buster.lqx file, and there it is. Doesn't put it in the same position for some reason, but you can move it into your workspace and then burn it wherever you like. Now, if you've seen my other video where I kind of go over how to create a grid pattern on your machine, so I have this grid, and this grid is to be used with some 3D printed feet so that everything is always in the same spot, because X216 and Y203 is in the center of your workable area. And you can check out that other video. I'll link it in the description that shows how to set this up. But let's say that this grid was burned into your spoil board, and you wanted to figure out how to have that other image show up here. What you can do is you can come here to rectangle, and I'm going to draw a rectangle. So that the center of that grid was 216 in the X, and then 203 in the Y, up and down. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to move this over here to that corner. Okay. And so now, even with this other thing open, I can go and I can import that buster.lqx file. And then if I move this to where it lines up right to the center of that, that means that this top corner would be right in the center of that grid that I burned onto the machine. And again, if this doesn't make sense, you can go check out that other video in the description, and it'll show you how I set that whole thing up, and that's it. If anybody has any questions, or if something wasn't very clear, or I said something incorrect, please do correct it. But hopefully this gave you some idea how to do some things on here, because I know it can be confusing if you have no experience with any type of laser engravers or programs like this, and just getting into it for the first time. So again, I hope this was helpful, and that's it. All right, bye.